Hey there, neighbor. I hope you're having a great day. I hope everything's lovely and the goose hangs high and you're making it through all this wet weather. I'll be glad when the rain quits. It's good to see you, though. I'm glad you're with us. I'm redoing a broadcast or a message I did a little earlier, and went a little long and got off the subject, so I thought I'd redo it. I took my grandson to school this morning, and in taking him to school, was listening to a news channel, and they were talking about a survey that had come out, and the survey had the 10 worst college degrees you can have in relation to how much they pay once you get out. And I'm assuming that they went from 10 to 1, but we were almost to school. And the first one they mentioned, which was probably the 10th one, was religion and theology. And, I was laughing about it to myself. I think one of them, I heard him say something about a teacher's um, degree, and that, you ought to pay teachers more, and I agree with that. But I was thinking about this matter of the, religion and getting a theological degree and that it doesn't pay much. Well, yeah, it doesn't pay much, but are you in it for the money? And I'll be honest with you, you got to be out of your mind to want to be a pastor in this day and time. I mean, and it may have always been so, but why in the world do you want to hear other people's problems? Why in the world do you want to sit with somebody that's having a tough time and try to help them solve their problems when you got problems too? As an old song by Farron Young said, everybody's got problems, and I'm no exception to the rule. If you won't tell your problems to me, then I won't tell my problems to you, because everybody's got problems. But when you're in the ministry, you're dealing with not only your own problems, but everybody else's problems. And everybody else thinks their problem is number one, and you got your number one problems, but you got to help them with their number one problems, and it's a stressful situation. Um, and it's not something that you would choose. A guy asked me one time, said, how do you know you're called to preach? I was down in Florida somewhere, and getting my van worked on or something. We was on vacation or something, and he said, well, how do you know that you is called to preach? And I said, I don't know. You just know. And he said, that's right. And this thing of being in the ministry is not something that you choose. It chooses you. And if you chose to be in the ministry, that's one thing. You can choose to be in the ministry and give it your all and be the Bible preacher that God wants you to be, but you're not going to be popular. And you're not going to be, you're not going to be the one that everybody knows and loves. The ones who love the Bible, love the Lord, they'll love you. But not everybody loves the Bible or loves the Lord, so they ain't going to love you. But who in their right mind would want to have to deal with other people's problems all the time? And then pastor a church, you got 100 folks out there, and you got 100 different people with 100 different needs, but yet they all have the same need, and that's the Lord. And you got to deal with it. And you gotta say something that's gonna be something that everybody can get something out of, and it goes back to being called by the Lord, and it's a call. It finds you. You didn't find it. You didn't seek it. Man, I had a good job. I was making money hand over fist when God called me to preach. And I was thinking, yeah, okay, right, yeah, yeah, okay, I'll do what you want me to do. Little did I know what it was going to involve throughout the years. Little did I know that, and I didn't get in, it's like old fellow said, he said, I didn't come here to be liked. And Deacon told him, he said, well, you certainly came to the right place. Because, it's not a job that you do for popularity here. If I get up and preach the word of God, it used to bother me. I'd get up and preach and maybe not have nobody respond or anything like that. And but if I've done what God wanted me to do, I've been successful. You say, well, did you have a house full of decisions? Yeah, I've had every Sunday I have a house full of decisions. Everybody decides to stay put, but I'm doing what God wants me to do, and so it shouldn't bother you. You're doing what God called you to do. You're serving the Lord. You've given your life to Him, and I'm responsible for preaching. He's responsible for the response. You know, He's responsible for what you do with it. And you know, it can be frustrating. You know, I knew a preacher, worked with a guy years ago. He'd stand out in the parking lot on Sunday morning, and if somebody didn't show up, he'd go call them, ask them what was going on. Where are you on your way? And this before cell phones. He'd see who was there. He'd call them. That ain't my job. My job is to feed you when you get there. And if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then you know either I need to get right or you need to get right and go find your place where you like it. You know, go find your place where you are getting fed. But I do the best I can. And so you know the ministry I've been in, I've been in some rough places. I mean Chicago and all the things that went on up there, and getting knocked out, and being in the prison ministry and the jail ministry up there, and preaching to the guys in Chicago, and then going to visit the families the next week. And my ministry has kind of been with a bunch of outlaws and outcasts. Not that all of y'all are outlaws and outcasts, but it's been something that the Lord. I do what God created me to do. And there are people that can get saved in my ministry that probably wouldn't get saved in anybody else's ministry. And so I'm doing it for the Lord. And I got over a long time ago being upset or having my feelings hurt because people didn't do what I asked them to do, or what. I get up and preach something and they don't do it. Look, when Samuel was helping the folks, the children of Israel, leading them, and Israel was a theocracy, God was in charge. And the people said, we want a king. We want to be like everybody else. We want a king to come in and out and fight our battles for us. And they chose Saul, who didn't go out and fight the battles. Ended up David went out, fought the battle for them. But Samuel told them all the bad things that was going to happen if they chose a king, and they didn't care. They said, we want a king. And the Lord told Samuel, listen, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. And if the preacher is preaching God's word and following God's will, then if they don't listen, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting God. And that's why you got to keep your ministry a biblical ministry. There's got to be a biblical reason for why you do what you do, and a biblical reason for the things that you believe. David, when David was going to fight Goliath, and somebody told him, said, man, don't you go out there. No, you're going to get killed. You go out there. That giant will eat your lunch. And David said, is there not a cause? There's a cause for this. Why do you stand for what's right? Why do you preach the truth? Because there's a cause. Why? I was thinking about a friend of mine. I met him back in 76, 77, whenever it was that I went off to college. And I met him, and he had already graduated. And Philip Pope, great guy, Philip and Colette. He's a missionary, and his wife, she didn't like me too much because I kept getting him in trouble. He's the guy that was with me when I would go up to O'Hare and witness, and he was with me when I got in a fight at O'Hare, and then he was with me the next week when I got in a fight at the in Altgeld Gardens. And that's another story. But she didn't really like me because he was up, goody two shoes fella, and he got hanging around me, and I had a rough background, so we hit it off. We was good friends. But what would cause Philip to leave his home in Texas and go to Indiana and spend 4 years or however long he spent in school to graduate, and then go on deputation and raise money to go overseas, having to learn a language that he didn't know. He had to go out of his way to raise the money, go over there, learn a language, deal with the people over there. Why in the world would somebody do that? With all the headaches and heartaches that come with it, it's because God called them. Is there not a cause? Yeah, there's a cause. God called them. Why did the disciples, why did they suffer all the things they suffered? Why did they go through the beatings and the rejection and the mockery and all the things that happened to them? Why did they all die a martyr's death? Because there's a call and there's a cause. And if you stand for what's right and do the right thing, you try to do the right thing, and you mark it down, you're going to have people that rebel against you. You're gonna have people. I mean, I hope you don't. I mean, I hope that you go in and everybody just loves you. You know, it's like you go in there and the new preacher comes in and everybody just loves him. They just love him so much they could eat him up. And about 6 months later, they wish they had. Well, I'm sad to say that's the way it happens a lot of times. But it's not unique to us today. Jeremiah, he was preaching to some rebellious folks. And I mean, the Lord told him, said, "Be not dismayed at their faces." Evidently, they'd sit out there and make faces at him. Listen to him. And Jeremiah, I think it's Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 2, he said, I wish I could just get a motel, build a motel or an inn out somewhere. Now think about this a minute. He wants to put a Motel 6 up somewhere, and he wants to put that motel up somewhere for traveling men. So it's going to be in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be an oasis somewhere between two big cities or something like that. He just wants to be out. He wants to get away from people. He learned you don't have to be a cannibal to be fed up with people. So he said, I quit. Another time he said, "Lord, I quit." He said, "I'm not going to preach in your name anymore. I'm not going to do it. I quit." And it wasn't long till he said, "I can't quit." Why? Because there's a cause and there's a call. God called him to do it, and so he's gonna do it. And so I just kind of wanted to encourage you. I guess I'm encouraging myself that it's not always easy, and it's not always popular, but it's the right thing to do when you stand for the Lord. You got to stand for what's right. One of the jobs. We look at the church and we think, oh, the preacher, he just gets up there and preaches. Well, yeah, he does that too, but he also counsels the people. And if you read the Bible, there are about 6 different things that he tells the preacher to do. And one of the things is set in order the things that are wanting. In other words, when you see something that ain't done quite right, fix it. And happy is the pastor whose folks will let him fix it. Happy is the pastor. Spurgeon, I remember reading about Spurgeon. And what was it that he had? There was something. It was a window or something that he wanted changed or knocked out or something, and he kept bringing it to the men, and nobody would ever fix it. So finally, he took a baseball bat to it or something, broke it, and now it got fixed. He had to take matters into his own hand. And sometimes you just gotta, you gotta kind of step back and wait on the Lord. But you trust the Lord, and He'll take care of it. And I'll tell you one thing: if you'll wait on the Lord, He'll do it a whole lot better than you will. There's been a lot of times when I've gone ahead of the Lord and things have worked out, but it would have been better if I'd have just waited on the Lord. You don't have to deal with it. Turn it over to the Lord. Now some people are going to look at it, and some people are going to say, well, you're scared. You're scared to bring that up, or you're scared to deal with that. No, 2 things I've always prayed for is wisdom and patience. And in the ministry, you're going to find that you need wisdom and you need patience. And you need a whole lot of patience. Patience will see you through the tough times. Patience, there have been times when looking back at my ministry, man, I had to wait till somebody died before I could do something. There have been times when I wanted to make some changes, but I couldn't. And there was just no way that I could do it. I just didn't see a way to do it. Or I could have stood up and said, "I'm the preacher, bless God. And if you don't like it, lump it, take it down the road and dump it." But I didn't do that. I waited on the Lord, and it worked out. It'll work out. But it takes a lot of patience. Now, if something's going on right at that moment, and you need to deal with it, that's one thing. But if it's just, if it's something that's not real bad, but it needs to be changed, you can wait on the Lord, and He'll take care of it. Trust Him. He will take care of it. You got to have wisdom. You got to have patience. But look, if you're a Bible preacher in 2025, you ain't going to be real popular. And you ain't going to pastor the biggest church in town. And you're not going to be the one they call on to speak or to pray at the civic union meeting or whatever it is. But you got some folks that you can reach, and God made you for a purpose. God made you, there have been people in every church that I've been that have gotten saved that probably, and I know I'm not taking credit for myself, I'm just saying, there was some tough situations. Herb Jackson, Junior Keene, oh shoot, I'll never forget. Oh, what's his name? Dang, I can't. James Clements. I'm sorry, James Clements, and others that have Junior Jackson. Man, he was a tough one, and people say, well, why'd you go up there to Virginia and Pilgrim's Knob, Virginia, and that little old town up there in the middle of nowhere? Well, a lot of things happened up there, and a lot of good things happened up there. The Lord did some stuff for me. But there's some folks that got saved up there, and I don't know, they may have gotten saved if I hadn't been there, but I just look at it like, well, God made me for a reason. I'm willing to do it. So why are you where you are now, out in Killingsworth Cove? Because God wanted me to go out there, and that's the only reason that I'm there, is because God called me. And as soon as He's through with me, and I always think about this. A friend of mine to the Lord last week, and Aunt Faye got saved a month or two ago. And, I keep thinking, and in the back of my mind is always, is this going to be the last person that gets saved in my ministry? Because somebody's got to be the last one. And when the last one gets saved, God's through with me. And He'll take me home. And so, if you hear old Steve's got himself beat up and killed or shot, well, if I got shot, just ask my family. They'll tell you where I was buried. But if something happens, I ain't worried about it. You go to homeless camps and you deal with the riffraff. I speak over to DRC, and I ain't worried about it. People. I went with a guy. We went over to Northwood Project. I mean, that's Northwood in Huntsville. Years ago, we were passing out tracts and visiting up there. And that guy scared to death. I said, man, ain't nothing wrong with being up here. There's a bunch of good folks, and I enjoy visiting with them. I enjoy being with them, and I have good rapport with them. But what I'm saying is, look, God called you for a reason, and if you're a pastor, stay by the stuff. God's called you for a reason, and you look around, you think I ain't doing much. Well, that one person that gets saved, it's worth it. It's especially worth it to that one person that you were faithful and that you did what God called you to do. But if God called you to do it, you got to do it. I tried to quit and I couldn't quit. Ended up homeless, sleeping on the floor of a locksmith shop over in Huntsville. I got back into ministry, and I'm thankful for where I'm at. I'm thankful for the folks out there at Killingsworth Cove. I love those folks out there, and I visit around out there, and I've knocked on doors. And this summer, I'll be trying to canvass the area and make some visits and reach some folks and bring them in. But wherever you are, God has called you to do something for Him. You've got a ministry. All you got to do is faithfully do it. But when you do it the right way. Don't worry about being popular. Don't worry about winning the, the popular vote. You worry about being right with God and doing it God's way, and God will take care of you. Because I'll say it again, who in their right mind would want to be a biblical pastor in 2025? It's only somebody that knew that God had called them and God had assigned them to the ministry that they're in right now, and so they do it. And so if you're looking for a place to serve and you want to come, we're going to start a Sunday school class. I'm going to start a Sunday school class maybe in the fall. But we may start off going through the book of Revelation. I got some good charts and stuff. I'll let you know more about that. But come see us out at Pleasmount Baptist Church, 707 Killingsworth Cove Road out in Gurley. We'd love to see you. 11 o'clock on Sunday morning right now. I'll tell you more about the Sunday school later on. Maybe we'll add some stuff as time goes on, as more and more people come in. But we'd love to see you. If I can help you with anything, let me know. God bless you, neighbor. Have a great rest of the week.